make sure you've given this a like, and I will get started. Okay, so this was from an article from the BBC, but there was also another article that I was reading off of from The Hill. But of course, the title is Sweden drops rape investigation. So prosecutors in Sweden have dropped an investigation into a rape allegation made against WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange in 2010. Assange, who denies the accusation, has avoided extradition to Sweden for several years after seeking refuge at the Ecuadorian embassy in London in 2012. The 48-year-old Australian was evicted in April and sentenced to 50 weeks in jail for breaching his bail conditions. He is currently being held at Belmarsh Prison in London. The Sweden investigation has been shelved in 2017, but was reopened earlier this year following his eviction from the embassy. Separately, the US is seeking Assange's extradition from the UK over his alleged role in the classified military and diplomatic material by WikiLeaks in 2010. And the deputy director of public prosecution, Eva Marie Persson, took the decision to discontinue the investigation regarding Julian Assange, the Swedish prosecution authority said. The reason for this decision is that the evidence has weakened considerably due to the long period of time that has elapsed since the events in question, it added. Ms. Persson said, I would like to emphasize that the injured party has submitted a credible and reliable version of events. Her statements have been coherent, extensive, and detailed. However, my overall assessment is that the evidential situation has been weakened to such an extent that there is no longer any reason to continue the investigation. Separately, the prosecutors held a news briefing in the Swedish capital, Stockholm, saying that the decision to drop the inquiry has been taken after interviews with 7 witnesses in the case. And of course, they give you a backstory, which is Assange was accused of rape by a woman and sexual assault by another following a WikiLeaks conference in Stockholm in 2010. He has always denied the allegations, saying that the sex was consensual. He has also faced investigations for molestation and unlawful coercion, but these cases were dropped in 2015 because time had run out. There was no immediate comment from Assange, but WikiLeaks welcomed the Swedish move to drop the investigation. And WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, Kristen Hrasnaffen, said, let us now focus on the threat Mr. Assange has been warning us about for years, the belligerent prosecution of the United States and the threat it poses to the First Amendment. And that is pretty much the article, but I wanted to just kind of give an overview. This is just from Wikipedia, and I just collected some of the important parts if you're not familiar with the legal proceedings. So it was Assange versus the Swedish prosecution authority, and those were the set of legal proceedings in the United Kingdom concerning the requested extradition of Julian Assange to Sweden to further a preliminary investigation into accusations of him having committed several sexual offenses. And of course, it was in 2010, 2 women. There was one that was 26, living in Ekoping, and a 31-year-old living in Stockholm. And they had reported to the Swedish police that Assange had engaged in unprotected sexual activity with them that violated the scope of their consent. And the police told them that they could not simply tell Assange to take an STD test, but that their statements would be passed to a prosecutor. But the chief public prosecutor, Eva Finne, she had said and declared, I don't think there is a reason to suspect that he has committed rape. But then Karen Rosander from the Swedish prosecution authorities said that he remains suspected of molestation. But of course, Assange has always said the charges are without basis and their issue at this moment is deeply troubling. So all of these allegations have come about, and then they've dropped the charges several times. Including one time when the proceedings began in 2012, and on August 12th, 2015, the Swedish prosecutors announced that they would drop their investigation into 3 of the allegations, again, because of the expiration of the statute of limitations. And then also in 2017, it had been dropped by Swedish authorities. But then, of course, they reopened this case in May of 2019. And then, of course, the prosecutors mentioned their intent was to seek extradition of Assange from the United Kingdom after he has served his 50-week prison sentence for skipping bail. And the last part that I wanted to add was, of course, that in 2016, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, they said that this counted, and he was effectively being held in arbitrary detention by the UK and the Swedish governments. And as always, the Swedish prosecutors have always denied that this has anything to do with WikiLeaks, which is obviously a lie. This is just a smear campaign against Assange to manufacture consent and to get people to not support Assange and to feel like he is a bad person, therefore they shouldn't support his work. Because if these governments were actually honest about the reasons why they want him prosecuted, then they would actually have to be honest in saying they are against a free press. They do not like the work, and they felt personally threatened by the work that Assange did. And now they're just trying to grasp onto something and just an allegation to hold him for that, so that, of course, the public will fear supporting him. And of course, like I said, to manufacture consent to his extradition. So that is what I wanted to cover today. This is really good news. It's obviously an important first step, but because that means that the whole worry was that, of course, if he was extradited if the extradition proceedings begin in Sweden, they're actually an attempt to get him in a jurisdiction which will then make it easier for him to then be extradited to the US. And of course, this is a huge threat to our First Amendment, and it's criminalizing journalism. So this is an important first step. And once again, these charges have, or the allegations rather, they've been, announced, and then of course they're dropped. So I hope it's for good this time, and that it doesn't happen again. Because these are baseless, and just the evidence is just continuing to weaken. And of course, it's showing the real intentions behind this. So that is what I wanted to cover.